Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cohen back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I recap the NBA games from the night. Some of y'all might have been watching the NFL playoffs or all around just enjoying your Sunday and missed some of the hoops, so that's what I'm here for, to go ahead and recap everything that you missed. And in particular, we're going to talk a bit about the Golden State Warriors, who really just don't make sense at this point. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy, hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos, and let's go ahead and get right into it. Of course, we're going to start off with Golden State versus Brooklyn, which would have been a bit more anticipated by me if Kevin Durant was playing. The storyline of him returning to the Bay Area and playing against these Warrior fans is one that's really intriguing. However, he's still dealing with that injury that hopefully he's able to return from soon. And so Brooklyn, to get a win, really needed some of the other guys to pick up the slack. And that's exactly what they did, as the Nets come out of this one with a W on the road. Kyrie and Claxton were the big names in this game, as Kyrie led the way with 38 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists. I'm sure Dubs fans are just absolutely sick of seeing Kyrie really go off against them every single time they play. It feels like ever since he was back in Cleveland. And like I said, Claxton also phenomenal, 24 points and 15 rebounds. The Warriors were trying to hack him a little bit in the third quarter to try and keep some of that momentum that they had and take advantage of Claxton's poor free throw shooting, which, by the way, his free throw form, some of the worst in the league at this point. But overall, he had plenty of positive impact to give outside of that, which allowed him to stay on the court and overall be huge in this eventual comeback win, because the Nets were down by as much as 17 in this game, and they were losing by 12 with just about 5.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. But they went on a 22-6 run, capped off by a huge Royce O'Neal three that ended up giving them the W. And once again, just trying to stay afloat without Kevin Durant, going on the road and beating the Warriors, that's a pretty decent accomplishment. However, this brings us to the Golden State Warriors, who, like I said, gave up a 22-6 run in the final 5.5 minutes of a game at home where they've been really good so far this season, to a team missing Kevin Durant. They also were leading by as much as 17 in this one and just collapsed down the stretch, which almost feels like a theme for them at this point in the season. With this loss, they fall back below 500. They're at the 10th seed at the moment, tied with a couple of teams. They're on the verge of falling out of even the play-in. They're 3-6 in their last 9 games, and this includes losses to Orlando, Detroit, and Phoenix, who didn't have Chris Paul, Devin Booker, or DeAndre Ayton in that game, as well as tonight against the Nets without Kevin Durant. Now, I wasn't super worried about the Warriors when they were losing a lot at the beginning of the year. It takes some time. There's championship hangovers. We've seen it happen plenty of times before, and especially when it's the Golden State Warriors, we've learned not to count them out ever. When you're like 10 games into the season and you're struggling, or even 15, 20 games, it's not that big of a deal. But at this point, we're over halfway through the year. We're 47, almost 50 games into the season, and they're below 500. Steph Curry is back, and they weren't even that bad. I mean, they weren't great without Steph, but they did a decent job of holding their own. But even now that Steph Curry is back, this team still doesn't look good. I felt like, okay, maybe they would build some momentum using some of the wins that they got without Steph Curry, and they would eventually go on a huge run, leading them back into a pretty solid playoff spot by this point. And maybe that still will happen after the All-Star break. However, I don't have very much confidence in the way this team is going. It feels like all the past Warriors teams had some type of identity. For example, last year's Warriors team was pretty average offensively, but they were the second best defense in the league, and when they got to the playoffs, they turned that offense up too to make them a really good team on both sides of the ball. This team at the moment is just overall really mediocre. Right now, they are the 17th ranked offense in the league and the 15th ranked defense. They don't have a particular strength or really any identity at all. It feels like usually their game plan is just to shoot a bunch of threes, which Warriors teams have done in the past, but they've also done a good job of attacking downhill and getting good shots near the basket, which this Warriors team doesn't really feel like they're able to do nearly as much. As I mentioned previously, it feels like they also fall apart down the stretch of games, not just tonight, but there have been multiple occurrences where it feels like, okay, the Warriors should have this one wrapped up. We even saw it against the Boston Celtics, who given are probably the championship favorites at this point. But even still, if you're the Warriors and you want to be a true contender, you can't be falling apart down the stretch of games. They consistently blow leads, make mistakes, and these aren't things you would expect from a seasoned team like the Warriors, who just came off a finals win. Most of this core are NBA champions, and yet they're falling apart in clutch time moments, blowing massive leads. It's just uncharacteristic of what you would expect from this franchise. Part of this could be their reliance on young guys down the stretch at times. Ty Jerome has played a lot of minutes for them, same with Jonathan Kuminga, Dante DiVincenzo, and Jordan Poole, all of which are about 25 years old or younger, and that is a lot of youth for a Warriors team that typically has some savvy veteran guys. Two names that we could mention that they lost, like an Otto Porter Jr. and a Gary Payton II, who gave them some great minutes. They're now being replaced with some younger guys, and they're making a lot more mistakes. Jordan Poole in particular, who has had a pretty up and down season so far. There have been multiple times in the clutch where he has a really bad turnover, the shot he takes just doesn't make sense, and Poole helped them them win a championship. He still is a very good player, but these are moments that you're seeing from him that kind of end up costing you in the end. Now, I will say their young guys were really good tonight. Like, they got 20 points from Jonathan Kuminga, they got 17 from Jordan Poole, and 13 from Dante DiVincenzo. However, typically, the bench is really bad, and I will say Jordan Poole was in the starting lineup tonight, but typically, their starting lineup is Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green, and Kevon Looney, the starting five that we've kind of come accustomed to at this point with the Golden State Warriors. And when that lineup is out there, they're outscoring opponents by 19.5 points. They have a 19.5 net rating as a 5-man unit. I don't think I have to tell you that that is absolutely phenomenal. But basically every other lineup that they put out there is negative or nowhere near as good as that starting five. When you don't have that core group of guys out there, the Warriors completely fall apart. As I mentioned, they did go with Jordan Poole in the starting lineup tonight, which seems to be a change that Steve Kerr is looking at going forward. But then again, having Kevon Looney off the bench feels a bit strange when he's been super critical to everything they've done over the past couple of seasons, all the successes that they've had. Kevon Looney has been really integral, so it feels weird seeing him come off the bench. But then again, Steve Kerr's won a few championships at this point, so I'm sure he has a good idea of what he's doing. So we'll see how that ends up working. But regardless, this Warriors team just hasn't been good so far this season. And so I put a poll out on Twitter because this is something that I've been super torn on, asking, are the Warriors contenders at this point? And it was pretty much a resounding no, which at this point, I agree. I don't think this Golden State Warriors team are true championship contenders. But at the same time, that feels wrong. I almost feel like I'm disrespecting this dynasty at the moment because I'll be honest, I kind of counted out the Warriors after they had those really rough seasons. It felt like they were never going to get back to true championship contention. And then in 2022, they won it all. So I was proven wrong. I'll completely admit that. And once again, it feels like I'm looking at this team and saying, how do they get back to championship contention? I mean, they do have young pieces. Kuminga, Moses Moody, for example, 2 pieces. Even James Wiseman, I'm sure still has some type of value, and they've got some first-round picks. They could put some of those guys together and upgrade somehow, and boom, maybe then again at the trade deadline, they are championship contenders. I completely acknowledge that that is a possibility. But as I'm recording this right now, before they've made any moves, this team does not feel like championship contenders. But once again, they've got Steph, they've got Klay, they've got Draymond, Wiggins, Looney, Steve Kerr. These are guys we've seen do it again and again. So it feels like disrespectful in a way, I guess, to say that they're not championship contenders. But when I just purely look at the roster, when I don't consider the resume, which maybe I should be considering a little bit more, but when I look at the play, when I look at the resume, they can't win a game on the road basically to save their lives, which they're going to have to do in a playoff series, because with their current seeding, if they make the playoffs, they're going to be starting a series on the road, which I do think they'll eventually make the playoffs. I would just be shocked if the Warriors don't. But overall, they're going to have to play multiple road games if they want to win this. They're going to have to win those road games. And even recently, as dominant as they've been at home over the course of the season, they've been losing a lot more games back in the Bay Area than they were at the beginning of the season. They're not particularly good offensively. They're not a good defensive team either. Once again, I still believe they could make moves and get this thing back on track. And I'm sure some Warriors fans are going to come to this video and be really mad at me. And once again, maybe I will be completely wrong. And by the end of the season, the Warriors are once again in the thick of the title picture. But as currently constructed, I don't think this team are championship contenders. Maybe that's disrespectful to say, but when you look at the stats and just watch this team play, it doesn't feel like the same type of Warriors squad that we're typically accustomed to seeing. And overall, I do not think they're championship contenders right now. Moving on from that game, we saw the Lakers face off against the Portland Trail Blazers in what seemed like it was going to be a blowout because the Lakers were down 25 points at halftime. Patrick Beverley and Damian Lillard kind of got into it in the second quarter. Then all of a sudden, the Lakers ended up losing the second quarter by 32 points, which is the worst margin in a quarter in Lakers franchise history. They got outscored, I think it was 42-10 if I remember the number correctly, which is absolutely abysmal. Then they ended up winning. They came all the way back from being down as much as 25 points at halftime, losing a quarter by 32 to win because the Blazers completely fell apart in the second half. LeBron James took over. He had 37 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 dimes. Thomas Bryant, who has had some monster games for them so far this season, especially when Anthony Davis has been dealing with his injuries. He had 31 points and 14 rebounds, and he joined Shaq, Kareem, and Wilt as the only Lakers to have 30 and 10 on 80% shooting or better, which is amazing. That is just an absolutely absurd stat. Russ got benched down the stretch is one thing I will note in this game in favor of Patrick Beverley, who was playing pretty solid, and Russ didn't speak to the media afterwards, so who knows if maybe that's a sign of things to come at the trade deadline, or Darvin Ham just kind of was feeling it in that moment. But regardless, this is a huge win for the Lakers. They need to continue to try and rack up as many as they can until Anthony Davis comes back and makes them a whole lot better, or maybe they make a move by the deadline. Although all the news about the front office basically is saying that they're probably not going to make many moves at the deadline because they just don't think this team is capable of winning a championship, which, to be honest, it probably isn't. As for the Blazers, Anthony Simons led the way with 31 points. Dame did have 24, 6, and 10, albeit it was on pretty poor efficiency. Jeremy Grant couldn't seem to score the basketball. And overall, one of the biggest issues was the play of Jusuf Nurkic, who got benched in this game after, I believe, just 15 minutes. He was so bad defensively, he could not keep up with Thomas Bryant to save his life. I mean, like we said, Thomas Bryant had a stat line only put up by 3 of the greatest centers of all time in this game. He was getting dominated inside and out. They went with Drew Eubanks in favor of him, and Eubanks held his own a lot better, so I completely understand why. He's had more fouls than points, I believe, in like his last 5 or 6 games. They really need a better center. I know Nurkic has been there for a long time, but he's just not the answer if they want to really compete. The final game I want to go in depth into is Thunder versus Nuggets, as OKC snaps the Nuggets' 9-game win streak, led of course by Gilgeous-Alexander, who had 34 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. He was absolutely eviscerating the Nuggets defense. Nobody they threw at him could stop him, and they had some decent defenders. I mean, Aaron Gordon is typically one of the better Shea defenders in the league, I've noticed, and even he, he was putting a hand right in Shea's face. He was doing basically everything he could, but it just didn't matter, and Shea would eventually hit the game-winning shot to go ahead off an inbound pass from Josh Giddey. Shea typically hitting game winners, it's what you expect, and Lou Dort would end up shutting down Jamal Murray on the final possession to give OKC a huge win. And also shout to Josh Giddey, who, like I said, had the inbound pass to set up the game winner, and also finished the game with 18 points, 9 rebounds, and 3 assists, and some huge plays down the stretch, including some really great finishes right around the rim to help OKC get this massive W. For the Nuggets, Jamal Murray led the way with 26 points, 5 rebounds, and 9 dimes. He was really good in this one, despite, like I mentioned, Dort putting him in the torture chamber right on the final possession, and there's nothing you can do when Lou Dort decides to lock up. Michael Porter Jr. missed this game due to personal reasons. Hopefully everything is okay. Nikola Jokic also did not play in this one, so Jamal Murray did everything he could to pick up the slack, but it just wasn't enough in the end, especially because the Denver Nuggets shot 17 of 33 from the free throw line, nearly 50%. Really bad from the line. You can't shoot that percentage if you want to win. I mean, they still kept it close despite that massive failure at the charity stripe, but overall, when you shoot like 51, 52% maybe from the line, you're just not going to get many wins. To wrap up the rest of the games, the Suns held on after nearly blowing a 25-point lead at halftime to the Memphis Grizzlies. They're led by Chris Paul, who had 22 points, 6 rebounds, and 11 dimes, and Mikal Bridges, who's put together a really good stretch of games over his last few. You also have the Raptors beating the Knicks behind 24, 7, and 6 from Siakam. The Heat beat the Pelicans in a comeback effort, led by 26 points from Tyler Hero and 9 huge back-to-back-to-back clutch points from Kyle Lowry. And finally, the Clippers beat the Mavericks behind 30 points, 9 rebounds, and 3 dimes from Kawhi Leonard, who's been playing really well as of recently. He's back above 20 points per game on the season. With all that being said, I appreciate y'all watching. Make sure to comment down below and let me know if you think the Golden State Warriors are title contenders at this point. Do you agree with me and think that they need more to really get back to that upper echelon that they were in last season? Or do you think that's just a matter of time before they turn things up in the second half and once again remind the world and me who they really are? Appreciate y'all watching. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.